overdose, rating, they've just come out and announced that in the last year, there's been over 100,000 overdoses nationwide, which is up from, I think last year was 73,000. So you've added 30,000 in a year. And if data shows correct, that is mainly due to fentanyl. So I was raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, a little town called Athens outside of Knoxville. My dad, was a solid believer. My mom grew up in a church where, they loved the Lord unconditionally, loved me and my brother. So I've got one brother who's 2.5 years older than me. Grew up going to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, vacation Bible school. So my addiction started roughly around 13 years old. It kind of fell into, my brother was 2.5 years older than me, and actually the way I got started was I put on his jacket one afternoon, and he had 2 joints in the jacket, and I took them to him, and he said, well, you got 2 options. You can tell them and I'll beat your head in, or you can smoke them with me. That led to smoking 2 or 3 times a week in 7th grade. That led to alcohol within about 5 or 6 months. By the time I was 15 years old, I was smoking weed every day, multiple times a day, and had led into LSD and cocaine pretty actively a couple times a week. At 16, I broke my back in 5 places in a car wreck that ultimately ended up with a pain pill addiction. That went all the way through high school, regularly selling to feed my addiction. At 20, I got a DUI, possession charges. Actually got arrested, and 3 days after that, I ended up meeting my wife, and I got clean for about 4 years. I smoked a little bit of weed here and there. 4 years later, I fell off a roof doing construction. That led back into pain pills, and that led to about a $300 to $400 a day Oxycontin habit for about 4 years, to the point that my wife had enough's enough. I'd pawned everything I owned. I'd stolen roughly about $20,000 from my parents and her parents, and then got clean again for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and we moved to Wake Forest for seminary. And I had never been to school other than high school as a high school dropout, and college just hit me hard. Nothing worked out. I failed everything I did. So I got out of seminary, and that led back to, I'm 30 years old, I can have a beer. And started drinking a couple beers a day, which led to roughly, at one point, I was averaging about 20 beers a day. That led back into pain pills. So, for the last 25 years, there was just this, who is John? This identity kept going back to, this is the only thing I was good at. Even as a believer at a young age, I never sought my identity in Christ. I had to do something to be better, or I wasn't worthy enough because of my past. In high school, the whole time I was known as the kid who could get you what you wanted, or I was the funny guy at the party doing the stupid stuff. And so I felt a connection there, and that's just kind of how that played out for 20 plus years. I think for me, because school didn't work out, so when I moved here, I sold my company, I sold everything I had, but my nail apron and all that, because I didn't necessarily come for a degree, I came for a closer walk. But then when school failed out, it's like that, in my mind, I flipped it back to, I'm still the same old person. I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And I think the best way that I've ever had that put to me was a counselor a couple years ago reminded me that I'm climbing these stairs. And he said, what you continue to do is you climb 1,000 stairs, and when you mess up, you fall back 3 or 4 steps. But in your mind, you think you're back at the bottom. And so you've got to remind yourself that's not, I have messed up. Today is a new day. We're going to pick up and move forward. You know, that's the sanctification process. It doesn't all, you know, he said, you didn't become an alcoholic overnight. You're not going to become a non-alcoholic overnight. It is a process. It takes time. So changing your mindset that I am a new creation in Christ. Therefore, I am going to make mistakes, but it's how I handle the mistakes. Does that mean, you know, that I immediately call somebody and say, man, I've messed up? And I've even had to learn that in the last year of when I do mess up, hey man, like, this is not who I want to be. I need your help. I don't want to be that guy again. And I can very well be him pretty quick. So I need your help to help me keep my eyes fixed on God. So we moved to Wake Forest in 2010. I came for seminary. And that didn't work out. And so then when I left the seminary, I went back into residential commercial construction for about 8 years. So I worked for the seminary for 1.5 years as a carpenter. When school didn't work out, I left and just went. We stayed here in Wake Forest. And then that's when the drinking over that 8-year spell, the drinking and the pain pills just blew up again. I went kind of back into that same lifestyle. I had left Tennessee, just new company, different town. And so got clean, went to Converting Hearts, and then went back to seminary. I have 4 kids.
4 kids.
Yep. So my oldest son, Bailey, is 23. He's still at home. Bailey was a great kid. He was one of those that just uber smart, and graduated top of his class. Went off to college, Charlotte, still trying to figure out now. He's got into IT, so he just took a new job doing programming. My daughter is 21, so she just turned 21. Nannies full-time, you know, she's got a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old that she watches, loves it. She's just, you know, she's geared to be a mom. And then I got a son, William is 18. Will passed away last December 20th, of an accidental fentanyl overdose. So he's my forever 18-year-old. That Will he's like his dad. He was good with his hands. He was teaching himself to weld. He was my handyman helper. We worked together doing construction. And then we have Elijah Mack is our oops baby, is what we call him. He's 8 years old. So we went 10 years and had another one. So Will got to where he was trying to figure out who Will was without daddy telling him or mama telling him. But Will was probably the most empathetic kid I've ever known. Will loved unconditionally. He'd give his shirt off his back. He loved his friends. He would fight for you if it was for what was right. And Will made a bad decision 11 months ago. He had started smoking weed about a year before. That led to a little bit of drinking here and there. The new stuff is that wax. They were smoking that, catch him, find it, take it away. And then that led to, and the adventures of trying to, it got into a couple Xanaxes. And then Will ended up on December 19th of 2020 buying what he thought was a Percocet 20 off of Snapchat. And it turned out that it was a hand-stamped pill with fentanyl, and it cost him his life. We'd had the conversation 2 weeks before. You don't know what you're getting into. He did the same thing I did to my daddy. He looked me in his eyes. And he said, "Daddy, I know what I'm doing. I got this." He got off of work that night. And around 11 o'clock, took the pill. And we presume at some point around 2 or 3 that morning, he couldn't breathe anymore. He went home. You know, so the awareness of the dangers of fentanyl that's out there, I can't press hard enough. And it just sent me for a whirlwind of, you're not here. You know, you're not, I don't get to hug you again. Yeah, it is, you know, and it is just you know, the waves over the year have kind of maybe gotten a little further apart, but they're still 100-foot waves that just come crashing in with the emotion of your children.